In today's society, we encountered a lot of information from various sources, such as the media, our interactions with our friends, family, and the members of the community. Most of the information we receive is helpful, but some may mislead us or may even be utterly false. In our everyday life, we are confronted with news, claims, and announcements from our peers, family members, figures of authority, the government, and media. But how do we know if they are telling the truth? In this video presentation, we will be able to distinguish opinion from truth, realize that the methods of philosophy lead to wisdom and truth, and last, evaluate truth from opinions in different situations using the methods of philosophizing. So what is philosophical method? Philosophical method or philosophical methodology is the study of how to do philosophy. A common view among philosophers is that philosophy is distinguished by the ways that philosophers follow in addressing philosophical questions. There is not just one method that philosophers use to answer philosophical questions. Philosophy is concerned with determining the concept of truth, the truth that lies at the heart of any inquiry.
Truth in metaphysics and the philosophy of language is the property of sentences, assertions, beliefs, thoughts, or propositions that are said in ordinary discourse to agree with the fact or to state what the case is. It is most often used to mean being in accord with fact or reality, or fidelity to an original or standard truth. Is also sometimes defined in modern context as an idea of truth to self or authenticity. Propositions is a statement about the world or reality. Propositions may or may not carry truth. Knowledge is the clear awareness and understanding of something. It is the product of questions that allow for clear answers provided by fact. Facts are propositions or statements which are observed to be real or truthful. Claim is a statement that is not evidently or immediately known to be true. This means that any claim can be proven by verification and experimentation. Therefore, truthful statements can be considered as based on fact. In philosophy, systematic doubt is employed to help determine the truth. This means that every statement, claim, evidence, and experience is scrutinized and analyzed. Doubt has a very important purpose in philosophy as it drives our desire to discover the truth. In philosophy, systematic doubt is employed to help determine the truth. A belief is true if it can be justified on proven through the use of one's senses. Another basis for determining the truth is a belief or statement is true if it is based on facts. Getting consensus or having people agree on a common belief is another way of determining what is true, although this approach has certain limitations. Getting everyone to agree on something may not take that belief true. Philosophers also believe that claims and beliefs should also be subjected to tests to determine the truth. In determining the truth requires also that a person can prove a statement through an action.
Today I will discuss about fact and opinion. So, fact is something concrete that can be proven. You can find facts in legal records, scientific findings, encyclopedias, atlases, etc. In other words, facts are the truth and are accepted as such. So, opinion. Opinion is less concrete. It is a view formed in the mind of a person about particular issue. In other words, it is what someone believes or thinks and is not necessarily the truth. Also, note in the example below how facts are the same for everybody, but opinions can differ quite widely. So, let us take a look at the following statement and determine which one state fact or opinion. So, number one, it takes me 30 minutes to walk from my home to school. Second, living near the school is better because we don't have to spend much for transportation. Third, my sister ate the last piece of pizza pie. So, sa statement number 1 and 3 are more factual than statement number 2. Using philosophical tools we learn deep fit into the category of facts since they contain ideas or information that are easily verifiable. While statement number 2 could be considered as opinion, since it only convinces people that the certain claim is a fact. So, again, fact is something you can prove to be either true or false. You cannot change a fact. Then, while opinion is how a person or things feels about something. So, you can change opinion. So, that's all. Thank you.
In distinguishing truth from opinion, we have to keep this in mind. Opinions are statements that go beyond providing facts. A conclusion is a judgment based on certain facts. Beliefs are statements that expresses convictions that are not easily and clearly explained by facts. Explanations are statements that assume the claim to be true and provide reasons why the statement is true. Arguments are a series of statements that provide reasons to convince the reader or listener that a claim or opinion is truthful. Fallacies are arguments based on faulty reasoning. Bias is disproportionate weight in favor of or against an idea or thing, usually in a way that is close-minded, prejudicial, or unfair. The facts that form the basis of a conclusion may not be disputed, but the conclusion itself could still be contested or questioned. To judge the truthfulness of belief, we must also consider things such a person's experiences and views. Facts are statements that are observed to be real or truthful. Claims are statements that require further examination to determine their truthfulness. Some arguments may contain fallacies. We must be aware of the various kinds of fallacies as this affect the validity of arguments. Opinions are often influenced by bias. We must be aware of bias so that we can objectively and critically examine points of view. According to Plato, opinion is something intermediary between knowledge and ignorance, while public opinion is the intermediate faculty which seizes the things that float between the two extremes.
The following are examples of fallacies. Fallacy, ad hominem. Characteristics: attacking the person presenting the argument instead of the argument itself. Appeal to force, using the threat of force or an undesirable event to advance an argument. Appeal to emotion, using emotions such as pity or sympathy. Appeal to the popular, the idea is presented as acceptable because a lot of people accept it. Appeal to tradition, the idea is acceptable because it has been true for a long time. Begging for question, assuming the thing or idea is to be proven is true, also known as circular argument. Causes and effect, assuming cause and effect relationship between unrelated events. Fallacy of composition, assuming that what is true of a part is true for the whole. fallacy of division, assuming that what is true for the whole is true for its parts. The following are examples of biases. Bias, correspondence bias or attribution effect. Characteristics, tendency to judge a person's personality by his or her actions, without regard for the external factors or influence. Confirmation bias, tendency to look for and readily accept information which fits its own beliefs or views and reject ideas or views that go against it. Framing, focusing on a certain aspect of a problem while ignoring other aspects. Hindsight, the tendency to see past events as predictable or to ascribe a pattern to historical events. Conflict of interest, a person or group is connected to or has a vested interest in the issue being discussed. Cultural bias, analyzing an event or issue based on one's cultural standards.
The methods of philosophy will help to learn the process of doing philosophy in a systematic way. On the other hand, philosophizing is to think or express oneself in a philosophical manner. Although philosophy is an organized body of knowledge, the subject matter of philosophy is questions, which have three major characteristics. Number 1. Philosophical questions have answers but the answers remain in dispute. Number 2. Philosophical questions cannot be settled by science, common sense, or faith. Number 3. Philosophical questions are of perennial intellectual interest to human beings. The methodology or method that philosophers use to address philosophical questions is critical thinking. Critical thinking is the careful, reflective, rational, and systematic approach to questions of very general interest. Critical thinking means understanding a philosophy and refraining from merely giving claims, but through careful thought, one reasons through the argumentation. The scientific method also leads to wisdom and truth because it uses an evidence-based approach to come up with its conclusion. In this method, all truths are supported by facts that can easily be tested or proven again through experiments, logical reasoning, or observation.
An understanding of opinion and facts in the mean to distinguish one from the other can further improve our understanding and appreciation of varied views and ideas. The ability to determine truth goes hand in hand with a holistic perspective and enables us to make wiser decisions, especially in choosing then ideas and views which we find acceptable. A critical mind aided by philosophy can help us from our own point of view that can guide us in making decisions and action when we face with a problem. Philosophy can help us determine ideas that are truthful and acceptable, which we can use to form our own views regarding certain matters. For Mabolok and Pasqua, 2008 critical thinking is a lifelong process of self-assessment that further consists of defining, analyzing, and devising solutions, arriving at reasonable and informed conclusions, applying understanding and knowledge to new and different problems, willingness to say I don't know. The attributes of a critical thinker include: look for evidence to support assumptions and beliefs, adjust opinion, look for proof, examine the problem, reject irrelevant and innocent information.
A method of philosophizing is a process of determining the truth or drawing conclusions from a statement using various philosophical methods such as Socratic, dialectic, scientific, and historical. Socratic method of philosophizing. The Socratic method, also known by the Greek term elenchus that means to inquire or to cross-examine, is an exchange of ideas using Socratic questioning. For example, a lawyer is asking further questions about the suspect's whereabouts during the crime because she is not entirely convinced by his alibi. Socratic questioning. Socratic questioning is a type of interrogative statement that clarifies points through understanding deeper meaning of a claim. In Socratic method of philosophizing, there is no particular end goal aside from reaching an absolute truth from probing statement and in the process eliminating ideas that are questionable or contradicting. For example, a mother is questioning her son's real reason for his excessive absences from school. In this process, statements are deconstructed or questioned to come up with the actual truth that is believed to rest on the roots of the argument. In a classroom setting, this method is used not to intimidate students, but to produce a deeper understanding of thoughts and ideas through further questioning statements or claims. Conflicting ideas are seen as invalid sources of truth, and probing questions are immediately derived from given statements.
Dialectic method of philosophizing. In classical philosophy, dialectic is a form of reasoning based upon dialogue of arguments and counter-arguments, advocating propositions and counter-propositions. A method of argument or exposition that systematically weighs contradictory facts or ideas with a view to the resolution of their real or apparent contradictions. For example, it's snowing and it is spring. You might also see dialects when in conflict with other people. I like to think of it as having an elephant in the room with two blindfolded people on the opposite ends of the elephant.
The scientific method, also called empirical method, is the process of determining truth or knowledge through experimentation, inductive and deductive reasoning, and hypothesis or theory testing. The scientific method could trace its history from the classical period with Aristotle, given the early structured theory on the scientific approach. The process begins with an idea about any given topic. Hypothesis testing is done to prove the validity of this idea. In philosophical view, the means of hypothesis testing and its results are considered the most important features of the method. The scientific method also values observation as an important aspect because it contributes to further understanding the results of the hypothesis testing. For an example, in exposing one plant to sunlight while limiting the exposure of another is done to test which setting promotes better plant growth. Historical method. The historical method is the process of gathering evidences, examining them, and formulating ideas about the past to come up with present truths. The historical method. In this approach, it is believed that history has divine order or a large cyclical or progressive pattern that enables events to repeat themselves and record information through historical accounts or archaeological findings. The process of learning the truth is simply through looking at past records to validate the present hypothesis. If viewed in a more general perspective, the historical approach would include only a historical account to differentiate the truth from opinion. History is seen as more important than logic and a more valid source of the truth. Using the historical approach is much like researching for an answer to a particular question. Reviewing what has been done in the past is a primary method of looking at a solution for a problem at present. For an example, you are going to Baguio for the first time with your family. You have the option to use one of two routes. You look for reviews published in the internet to determine which of the two routes is better. When you evaluate information, it is very important to distinguish between fact and opinion. How do we know if something is true? Philosophers emphasize the importance of belief as a basis for determining truth. It is said that there are instances when we have to unlearn something so that we may learn anew.
Philosophers question what they knew and even analyze their methods of knowing in order to understand themselves and the world much better. The discussion on truth is part of philosophical studies on knowledge, where philosophers explore the nature of knowledge and the ways of knowing.
Both Socratic and dialectic method are based on a discussion between two or more people who may carry differing views but wish to pursue the truth by seeking an agreement with one another. Meanwhile, the scientific method is a process of determining truth or knowledge through experimentation, inductive and deductive reasoning, and hypothesis or theory testing. The scientific method, also called empirical method, is a process of determining truth or knowledge through experimentation, inductive and deductive reasoning, and hypothesis or theory testing. Logic is the truth based on reasoning and critical thinking. It includes analysis and construction of arguments. It serves as path to freedom from half-truths and deception.
So since reasoning was mentioned, let us know what are the two types of reasoning.
Deductive reasoning. In this type of reasoning, conclusion comes first, followed by the main points, and last will be supporting data, facts, example, and evidence. General idea comes first before the specific or particular idea. While inductive reasoning is a type of reasoning that supporting data, facts, example, and evidence comes first, followed by the main points, and conclusion will be the last part. This is the vice versa of the deductive reasoning because particular idea comes first before the general idea.
I got my head out the sunroof.